Hello and welcome to our Friday webinar. This is going to be a big one, guys. We've got a very hot topic. I think we're going to have a lot of people logging in, so I am going to rapidly fire the beginning of this so we can get directly to some questions. But if you're just joining us, we are doing Translating Parrot. We have our very special guest, Pamela Clark, and we're going to cover pet bird behavior Q&A. So question and answer session with you. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you.
And just, so you've got you're an IAABC, CPBC, retired CVT. Can you just really quickly, if someone's joining us and they're not sure what those titles mean, what they stand for?
Are you asking me that?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
Oh.
because you might have people who have never, new to birds.
Sorry, yes.
Sorry.
It stands for Certified Parrot Behavior Consultant.
Okay.
And IAABC is the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, and they certify behavior consultants. So I think you're about to say that people can get CEUs for this, attending this session. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. Brenda would know that. I was just in case someone just got a bird and they saw the webinar and they're like, what do these acronyms stand for? What do they mean? So just kind of give them a rundown of, because they're important. It kind of shows a little bit about the background. So yes. Yeah. All right. Okay, so I think we're going to have a pretty good house here today as far as attendance goes. I do have so it's a Q&A, so we are going to obviously be asking questions. If you have a question for Pamela, please use the Q&A chat button and not the Q&A button and not the chat button, so that we can get the question. Okay. So let's see. I do. Okay, you ready for this first one?
I am ready.
All right. Again, if you're just joining us, you are at the perfect webinar for your bird. It's Pet Bird Behavior Q&A, and I think even if you don't have a question, you'll learn from other people's questions. So. Okay, here we go. So question, they just rescued a sun conure who's about 4 to 5 years old from a horrible situation. They were caged 24/7 for 2 years, about awful diet, can't fly. They think the flight might be because they have no musculature from being, in the cage. So they're wondering why he frequently flutters his wings close to his side and very fast. And he usually screeches at the same time, but not every time. So any ideas, suggestions? They just want to give him the best quality of life that he deserves. They have a vet appointment in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I have several suggestions. First of all, kudos to you for giving a home to a bird who needed one, especially a sun conure, the loudest bird under creation. So, no, it's great that you have him. The first thing that I would say is that a bird's past does not dictate his ability to benefit from the future. I think it's a common misperception out there that a bird who's been abused or neglected has somehow been crippled in a particular way, and that certainly is not the truth. Parrots are kind of magical in this particular ability that they have. They are so adaptable and so flexible that no matter what condition they come from, if you put them in a new situation, most of them are going to be very ready to make the best of it. And especially a sun conure, because the sun conure is a very forward bird. So the first thing that I would do is to change the diet in a benevolent way. And we can't take too much time on each question, so I'm not going to go into exactly how you would do that, but it's important that you, for now, continue to feed him the bad diet that he had before. Don't change his diet right away, because that's really going to impact him adversely. So let him eat the bad diet for a while he settles into your house, and then develop a plan for changing it to pellets and chop and Lafeber, Nutriberries, and Ava cakes. Again, I probably have to issue this disclaimer at every webinar. I don't work for Lafeber. I use those foods for 30 years. And I just recently began to give webinars. They're just very solid foods for birds for several reasons. So with my diet recommendations, I make sure the birds not only have access to pellets 24/7, but that they have 2 foraging periods a day, for a chop mix in the morning and then the Nutri-Berries and Ava cakes at the end of the day. And then to make friends with him, I would teach him to target. You don't even have to handle a bird to teach them to target. And I would also assess his feelings about your hands. If you bring your hand up to him and he moves away from it, then it's not right at this time to try and get him to step up. Instead, see if you can't motivate him to step up by maybe just putting your hand near him on the cage and maybe offering him some food as he gets near it. That's all that comes to mind right off the top of my head. But I think you're going to have a wonderful time with this bird. One last thing. Since sun conures are so loud, you should begin to reward any desirable noises that he makes at all. So any whistles, any talking, chuckles, any noise, immediately call out, yes, and then walk over and give him some kind of food treat that he wants. If you do that consistently, he's never going to be a screamer. He'll be, he may sound off morning and evening, but he'll be pretty quiet during the rest of the day. I do think that you would benefit from a behavior consultation in regards to this bird, because rehabilitating a bird like this can be a bit tricky, and there's lots of changes to be made here. So I realize that seems self-serving, but I would be more than happy to help you. And the details about my consulting services are on my website, PamelaClarkOnline.com. So, but good luck with your little bird. Congratulations.
Yes, that's awesome. Okay. We have a question from Marcia. 22-year-old, another 22-year-old sun conure won't stop regurgitating, using toys and perches and everything else. She has been seen 2 avian vets and blood work done, and the only answer is that she's hormonal. So how can they help change that behavior, or should they look for something else?
No, this is definitely a sign of increased hormone production. There are 5 triggers for increased hormone production. The first is a pair bond with you, and that gets established usually from just very close contact with your body, sitting on shoulders or laps, or even staying on hands or arms for too long a period of time. I don't worry about that. We can't do anything about the way the bird looks at you, but we have other triggers that we can do something about. The second is engaging in all of the experiences that serve to create the pair bond in the first place. That would include sitting on your shoulders, sitting on your lap, lying on your chest at the end of the day. If it's a small bird like a green cheek, it includes caving in your hand or the ice cream hold, cuddling, just, petting. Some people say, I only pet his head, but if you pet his head for 30 minutes, that pair bonding activity, that's not, if we're going to give our birds scritches, it should be perfunctory. Oh, what a good bird you are. And you're done. Okay. Anything much beyond that has the potential to be a pair bonding experience. And I know it sounds very weird and improbable, but I have also learned that sharing the same furniture contributes to this as well. How many times do you hear about the bird who sits on the couch next to the owner and digs while he's there? And so if parrots get to share your furniture, it usually winds up being a bit of a nesting experience. So we don't want to do that either. The third trigger is cavity seeking. So many birds will cavity seek by just showing an interest in getting into a small dark place. But they can be pretty unique, and every species is a bit different. African grays always want to take over the bathroom. That's how African grays cavity seek, although they do also like to perch under furniture. Green cheek conures cavity seek, and sun conures too, by wanting to go down your shirt. So there are many different ways that birds engage in that activity, and you've got to, I mean, it's best if you have a trained pair of eyes who can kind of help you identify that, unless you are very observant and pretty savvy. But here's a tip. If your bird really, really wants to stay in that place, then you might ask yourself why, and assess it for darkness, you know, anything that might contribute to those nasty feelings. The next trigger is a diet high in fats and carbohydrates. So seed mixes, nuts, everybody loves to feed pasta, pizza crust, bread. You know, any table food that contains carbohydrates shouldn't be fed unless it's fruit. And then any seeds and nuts should just be saved for training. We want to keep the diet very low fat, low carb, which is why I recommend the diet that I mentioned earlier. The last trigger for increased hormone production is warmth. Now, I'm sure everybody's wondering why I didn't mention day length. It is definitely a trigger, but it's not a trigger that I believe we need to do anything about. I don't recommend for 12, 14 hours of darkness. I don't recommend blackout shades. You know, the issue of day length has been completely misunderstood by most people, and that stupid advice to give your bird 12 hours of darkness and sleep every night, there's so many reasons why you shouldn't do that. That can actually turn into a cavity seeking experience. But warmth is much more of a trigger than day length is. And I think actually the effect of day length has actually been warmth mistaken for day length. Because if you think about it, when parrots begin to become more hormonal, it's in the springtime as the day length increases, but so does the temperature. And in the fall, we turn on our heaters as well. And we often provide supplemental heat in error, thinking our birds need it. So that's what you need to do to cut down on that regurgitation. You solve all those problems, and you will see that regurgitation begin to come down until it's non-existent.
Okay, I had I get a lot of birds, I guess they regurgitate to like toys, right? If you have a bird that's like this one that's regurgitating to like just almost like not some of the people say take out the toy, but what if it's regurgitating to like every toy? Like, do you have a situation where you would want an empty cage where there's no stimulation like toys, or how do you go around that? How do you circumvent?
You would just ignore it. Because you want to motivate the bird to perform other behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want him regurgitating. Well, he can't perform other behaviors if you take out all of his enrichment. So instead, I would try and provide this bird with a daily project, some foraging trays. I would encourage him to interact with enrichment also by rewarding him socially, just observing it and calling out, oh, what a good job you're doing that. Anytime he did interact with enrichment, just so you start to wean him away, but he's not choosing this behavior. It's a physiological reaction to increased hormone production. So we don't want to punish him for it. You know, and same thing, everybody says, well, take away anything they masturbate on. Well, yeah, I mean, within reason. If there's just one toy they masturbate on, then yeah, okay, take it out. But if they masturbate everywhere, just ignore it, because it's going to come down. There isn't anything that you can do to prevent it, really, because it's a physiological reaction. So instead, you have to take the steps to lower hormone production, and then you don't have to worry about it. It's not going to happen.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have a question about a pair of Princess of Wales parrots. So male and female, and they're kept in separate cages. Charlie the male has started screaming each afternoon. It doesn't matter if he is in or out of the cage. This can go on as long as an hour, and he is extremely loud. And sometimes it happens during the day also. Any suggestions to stop this behavior? It's funny, you don't think of, I mean, Princess of Wales, they're not as common as others. I'm curious how loud they could be. On a scale of,
I think,
how do you compare them to sun conures for a reference here?
The first thing that I would ask is whether or not there's some sort of trigger for the screaming. Is there something going on in the environment that starts him up? If there isn't a trigger, then the best thing to do is absolutely ignore the screaming. Get a drink here. And I will hasten to add that ignoring does not mean leaving the room. Unfortunately, it has been advised that if a bird screams, you should leave the room, or if the bird stops screaming, you should come in the room. I don't recommend this at all, and this is not ignoring, this is taking an action. The reason I don't recommend it is because for two reasons. Number one, it's not practical. I'm not going to limit my client's ability to walk in and out of rooms. I mean, you can solve a screaming problem without decreasing the owner's quality of life in that way. And then for the second reason, it becomes a game for the birds. And in fact, I have a client right now, a veterinarian. She was given the advice by another consultant to leave the room whenever her Goffin's cockatoo screamed. Guess what? He screams even louder now, and she's asking me what to do about the screaming. So ignoring means that you just act like the bird doesn't even exist. You just walk past him like he doesn't exist. Now, it may often require hearing protection in order for you to ignore the behavior. I recommend the loop experience. It's actually called the loop, L-O-O-P experience. This is the travel case. And when you put these in, they just look like this. Like a little ring in your ear. Did you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And they have different colors for the fashion-minded. And they are engineered to reduce the noise by 20 decibels. So it makes it a lot easier. And they're only $24.95 at Amazon. And every single person I've ever recommended them to thinks they work great. So you must ignore the behavior, but then you'll never get rid of the problem if you only ignore it. You have to reward desirable vocalizations, just like I mentioned with the sun conure. So anytime either bird makes a desirable vocalization, I want you to use a bridge. And it would be stupid to carry a clicker around with you all day long. So I have my clients use the verbal bridge, yes. I don't want you to use good, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So anytime you hear a desirable noise, you're going to call out good, and then walk over and give that bird some sort of desirable food. Now, you're going to question whether the birds are going to get all confused and upset because you're only rewarding one. No, they will figure it out. So you just keep an eye on which bird it is. You're going to have to maintain an awareness of what's going on in the environment. Listen with half an ear for those desirable sounds, and then just call out the bridge and go over and reward the bird that made the desirable noise. And you can use the same bridge for both birds. That will work just fine. Now, there will be times when you won't be able to go over and deliver a food reinforcer. That's when you can use that word we love, good. You just call out, just give the bird some social attention from wherever you are. Tell them what a good bird they are for making that noise. Now, a bird's living conditions can also create more screaminess. So make sure that you have a diet that is low in metabolizable energy. Fats and carbohydrates give a bird more energy. A bird with more energy is going to be more screamy. So your diet needs to be low in metabolizable energy. And if these birds are flighted, you could train them to target and then also teach him to fly A to Bs. You know, just exercising a bird can reduce the screaming by quite a bit as well. And protecting them again from anything that might trigger the screaming. But I think that you'd be well set if you just did those things. I think you'd be done with your problem. And good job keeping those birds caged separately. When you did that, I was like, yay, you know, even birds that are pair bonded should always be caged separately. So it sounds to me like you're doing a great job.
All right. All right. Okay. We have a question from Adam. What's your recommendation for dealing with warmer temperature in the summer? So the bird room that they have gets, even with air conditions, seems to get to 78 degrees quite quickly. They've dealt with feather plucking for the last few seasons, but it grows back once summer is done, mainly from, it's mainly the Hans macaw. Changing location seems to stress them.
Well, I think 78 degrees is just fine. I mean, that's what my house is in the summer. And I think for all kinds of energy conservation reasons, we don't want to cool a room even below that for parrots. So what I would suspect is that there are other triggers in the environment for the feather damaging behavior. Whenever a bird does feather damage in a cyclic way, you know that a strong driver of that behavior is going to be increased hormone production. But if a bird is only experiencing warmth, that's not going to be enough to make a bird feather damage. So I think you need to look at the types of interactions that you have with the bird, explore any cavity seeking, and examine the diet as well.
Okay. And they added that they assume it's the heat because they try to narrow everything else. They're trying to do a process of elimination. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then I would also, so I used to think that there was this myriad of reasons for feather damaging behavior. Now I think it's caused mostly by a combination of two factors. It doesn't mean there can't be others, but stress and increased hormone production. So I would examine then also anything that might be stressing the bird out a bit in that room. Explore that option. If there isn't anything there, then I would say, I am so sorry, but some birds do this in a cyclic way. And so what I mean by that statement is that some birds seem especially sensitive to the triggers for increased hormone production. And you may just have one of those birds who still feather damages in a cyclic way. Sorry, I just had a thought intrude. I want to tell you about a case. But even if you do everything possible, you still won't be able to get rid of it. But I wanted to leave you with a little bit of hope because I just thought about a client that I talked to yesterday. I've worked with him now for 3 or 4 years. We just talk once a month at this point. And he has an African gray who feather damages. She started when she was about 2.5 years old. Now she just turned 4. And as soon as she started, we were already working together, but he called me and I gave him recommendations for hormone production. And he too did lower everything as far as he could, all of the triggers, but it persisted. But I just talked to him yesterday, and finally, she looks better than she ever has. And this year, the feather damaging wasn't quite so bad. So I believe this can be a condition that improves very slowly also. Not just that it's cyclic and that she will improve by looking feathered part of the year, but she may get to that same point that this gray did and not feather damage at all.
Okay. Do you recommend if you're trying to narrow down like what might cause a behavior, like journal, like takes like have a notebook journal of what might have kind of when you're observing your bird to see if you see a routine, like if you see a connection eventually, like how long that is that something that you recommend to?
No, because there is no routine. Feather damaging behavior is a disease of captivity, and it just occurs all the time. So you can't use applied behavior analysis to target it by examining what the antecedents are. You certainly don't want to reward it by giving the bird attention for the behavior. That, of course, is going to increase it, but there won't be any antecedents that you can change. You know, feather damaging birds, feather damage. That's just the way it is until you change things in the environment and they begin to improve gradually. And I also, you know, some consultants love to use these tick sheets where owners have to make a tick every time the bird screams or feather damages. I think that is a supreme waste of time for clients. And I would never recommend that. It doesn't really matter in most cases when a behavior occurs. In most cases, it's going to be, well, certainly with feather damaging behavior, you're going to change the environment to change the behavior.
Okay. All right. And we have a question about, just wait, if you can clarify the question before, the yes for a bridge followed by food reward, good for social interaction / praise. I think you might have said good for both examples. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I might have misspoke. I am really tired today. I didn't sleep at all last night. No, the process would be, if you can deliver a food reward, you're going to use the bridge word yes. A bridge is a promise. So if you say that word, you have to go and deliver a food reinforcer. And so if you can't, that's when you can just give social reinforcement. Just tell the bird what a good bird they are. That makes sense now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for asking that clarification.
That's good. Laura, so Laura asked, they have is it a mustache or mustache parakeet? How you want to say it?
Mustache parakeet.
See, people say mustache parakeet, 11 years old. Out of nowhere, he sometimes bites very hard and doesn't let go. It hurts more than getting blood drawn. So yeah, I can feel you there. You're not supposed to react. That's what they said, but it hurts so bad. So they tend to put him back on his cage for a timeout. Any suggestions to deter this? Also, every time he is out, no matter the time of year, he tries to mate on them. They don't encourage this, nor do they pet anywhere other than his head. So how do you break this habit? So there's a biting habit and then a masturbation habit.
Well, if a bird is masturbating, it's because of increased hormone production. So I would refer you back to the answer where I described all of the triggers and then the actions that you would take to reduce those. That's how you're going to get rid of the masturbation. aggression occurs basically for two reasons. The first reason is when the behavior has function. The bird is trying to avoid doing something. So the bird bites you because it doesn't want to step up on your hand, or bites because it doesn't want to go back into the cage. But then the second kind of biting that takes place is simply due to being in a state of heightened arousal because of increased hormone production. So I would wonder about the circumstances of the bite. That's what you're going to need to look at. When you say it just happens, boom, out of the blue without any warning, is that when maybe you're having a moment with the bird, when you're interacting in a very close way by petting or letting the bird sit next to you, or somehow be close to you, that would be more due to a state of heightened arousal. So if the bird's biting for function to prevent doing a behavior, then what you're going to do is use positive reinforcement to teach them to perform that behavior. So if it's stepping up, you would, show the bird that you have a reinforcer, bring your hand up, encourage them to get on it, give them a food treat, and then just put them right back down. So you need to develop some kind of training plan that uses positive reinforcement to teach the behaviors the bird is avoiding. If it's not avoiding behaviors and it just occurs out of the blue, truly, then that's because of increased hormone production. And so you can solve that biting by just reducing the triggers.
Okay, a question from Angela about green cheek conure, a girl, super hormonal all year long, never had they never had one this amorous before. They feel it's cruel not to give them an outlet. So she has a soft, small parrot toy who is her boyfriend. It was enormously helpful, but sometimes she gets jealous about her or her husband, and sometimes bites out of nowhere. So do you have an opinion on the use of hemp seeds or CBD supplements to help the bird chill out, as I say?
Well, I don't think you should give a medication to a bird to solve a behavior that occurs because there's something in the environment that you can change. I don't believe that birds need an outlet. I have encountered this idea before from clients who felt that the bird really needed to come to a climax, to somehow fulfill their sexual desires. Well, that's not necessary. See, the birds don't care about any sexual release. What the birds care about is breeding. So when she interacts with her little toy, she believes on some level that this is going to lead to eggs and babies. But the whole time it is encouraging increased hormone production. And I believe that increased hormone production causes physiological changes in the bird that are very much to that bird's detriment. I have dealt with 2 cases now, where birds were self-mutilating, and one of them was a green cheek conure. So that's how dangerous this can be, to let this go. The bird was so hormonal, and this was determined by x-rays and a veterinary specialist. The bird was so hormonal that its gonads had swelled and pressed on the sciatic nerve, so it was self-mutilating his feet. So this really isn't something that we want to encourage in birds. So I would say take the little toy away, and then you don't need to give CBD. Regarding the efficacy of CBD, I don't have any facts about this, but I am suspicious that it perhaps would not be effective, because it is such a fad now that you have to be very careful to get a good product. So if you were to get a good product, I would use CBD for something like pain. I certainly wouldn't use it to help a bird calm down, because if a bird is too excited, it's because factors in the environment are not meeting that bird's needs. Even though the toy may make her happy, it's not really meeting her needs as a bird.
Okay. Oh, a follow-up on the biting mustache parakeet. He just it says he just sits on me and then runs and attacks. So he's
Yes. So
yeah.
when he sits on you, he is experiencing increased hormone production. He gets into a state of heightened arousal, and that's why he bites. Get him off your body. Parrots belong on perches, and the way that you get them to stay on perches is by teaching stationing. So, you know, you should be able to move your arm between space and time, between you and your bird. Get a nice perch. Contact Nyla Kopp at My Birdie Buddy, or buy some other kind of play stand and put it just, see, parrots want to be in our proximity. They don't really want to be on us. So put them 2 feet from you on a play stand and give him treats for staying there. And then he won't bite you.
Okay. Okay. Oh, they want to know if this one is a behavior or if it's a medical related. Peter from Holland. Welcome, Peter. So with a female 1-year-old egg-laying yellow crown / fronted parakeet, aka kakariki, who gets a complete seed mix with some pellets. Next to that, she gets her minerals and her iodine block, egg food, a little fruit like banana, mandarin, also some microgreens, carrot, egg. Problem is she keeps putting her feces in her drinking water, so they have to change the water 3 times a day. Do you think she needs something else like a probiotics for better gut health? So is there like a behavior reason why she would be putting her, I don't know if like she's just choosing to poop in her water or if bringing the feces and dropping it in the water, but would there be a behavior reason for that and also a medical connection on what could be going on?
No, I would say move the water dish and see if you can't create an environment around it that would discourage that. You would just change the environment to eliminate that behavior. The diet certainly doesn't have anything to do with it. I mean, just the fact that she poops in her water dish doesn't mean that she has bad gut health. You would determine that by looking at a dropping. If her droppings are normal, then her gut health is normal. And so I think this is just a mechanical problem, it sounds like to me. Maybe the water dish is too big or too small or located in the wrong place, or, you know, I think you change the environment and or make peace with changing the water multiple times a day.
Okay. What are your thoughts on water bottles versus bowls? Do you have a thoughts?
Yes, you should never use a water bottle with a bird. It is not ethical to restrict a bird's access to water to a water bottle. Too many birds like to bathe in their water dishes. I mean, if you live with birds, you are just going to go to a lot of work like this, you know, changing their water multiple times a day. That's not an unusual thing, really. And there have been birds who've died as a result of having water bottles, because many birds like to dunk their food in water. So what a creative bird will do is push his food up against the spigot, and then particles of food get jammed up in there, and the bottle drains dry, and the bird doesn't have access to water. You know, that's not too far-fetched. How many people leave their birds alone for a weekend and maybe just have somebody come in and give them food and water? It's a serious danger. The second is that there are many bacteria that flourish in water. Pseudomonas is one of them. And if you're not bleaching and scrubbing that little tube, at least once a week, you're putting your bird at risk of using them. So please do not use water bottles with your birds. They're for guinea pigs. They're not for birds.
Okay. All right. We have a question from Yvonne. Do you think there is validity that parrots prefer men or women based on their history with humans? So they have a yellow-naped Amazon who seems to, this seems to be the case with. So preferences, male or being with men or women, being on their best.
Well, the thing is that if a bird has had a pair bond in a previous home, he will always try and replicate that same type of bond in a future home. So if a bird had a pair bond with the husband in the last home, he's going to gravitate towards that husband in the next home and show a definite preference. Same if it's a woman. Although there are times, so I have a case where some folks have a female eclectus, and they first consulted with me when they very first got her, and she was showing a preference for the husband, and that was when she was only 16 weeks old. So I first met them when she was just a baby. Now I think she's 2, and we're still consulting, and she still has a preference for the man. I can't figure it out. But preferences like that can also be modified. So if a bird does show a clear preference for one person, then your job is to not let that happen. You should even those bonds up by making sure that you don't let the bird perch on the favored persons. Like, resist that idea that, oh, she's just going to be my bird. It is not in a bird's best interest to set up that sort of social structure in the home. So instead, just don't let the bird on your body if the bird loves you. Instead, form a relationship through training. Start with targeting, and then the more favored person could teach the bird to target, and then the less favored person could also target with the bird, so that the relationships would become equal. Because you can change a bird's relationship to a person.
Nice. Same with people, right? Just kidding. Oh, can you let's see here. Just as a wait for the next question, that reminds, so you ever hear that? I used to hear this from the bird talk days, like if you're the favorite person and you have the bird on you, and then let's say the least favorite person walks by, that you get bit because the bird's trying to tell you, like, let's go. Have you ever heard that before? That it's like the
bird's not
person
trying to. Well, the thing is, if a bird has a pair bond with you and is on your body and someone else walks by, so in the wild, it would be that bird's job to drive the intruder farther away. But if a bird can't do that, they're going to bite you to tell you to go farther away. So, well, maybe we're saying the same thing and I just misinterpreted what you said.
No, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Let's get away from that other person. Yeah, I know that happens all the time.
Okay. That's interesting. I think that's fascinating. Okay. Heidi asks, how do you discourage an Amazon from landing on a smaller bird's cage when it is out? They've been asking to keep, I have to keep asking bird to step off, but she returns a short time later, even when praised for stepping off. So Amazon keeps flying onto the smaller bird's cage.
Yeah.
How do you discourage that? Is there a way?
Well, for one thing, parrots don't care about praise because they don't care about our opinions of them. So you're going to need to use a reinforcer that's more valuable, some other kind of food. And the problem that's happening is that when the bird flies over to the smaller bird's cage and you go over to step it up, you're actually giving it social attention for being there at that point. So you're rewarding the bird for going to the small bird's cage when you do that. What you need to do is feed the bird where you want it to be. And perhaps move it a greater distance away from the smaller bird, make behavior harder to perform. as well. Again, this is a bit of a logistics thing. I would kind of need to know more about the situation to make other suggestions. But, you know, there's a very valuable concept in professional training called feeding for position. You feed the bird where you want it to be, right? I had a session right before this with a very young girl. She had an extremely fearful green cheek. So we've worked through the fear. Now the bird is stepping up, and now she wants to know how to get the bird off of her hand, because sometimes now the bird won't get off of her hand. That's the irony. I did too good a job. So, you know, she's been feeding the bird for staying on her hand. That's how we train the bird to stay on her hand for longer and longer periods. So I said, well, if you want the bird to stay on your hand, then you're going to feed the bird when it's on your hand. If you want the bird to go on the cage, then feed the bird, you know, make it obvious that if the bird steps off, it's going to get a treat there. So feeding for position, think about that. You know, if you want the bird to stay in a certain place, go over and keep giving them reinforcers for staying there.
Okay. Let's see what we got next here. These are great. We're like rapid fire. We're getting through so many questions. You're like on it. Okay, here we go. So, okay, okay. I'm caring for my son's sun conures for another year or so. He's in the military. So he's not able to come home this year on leave. So they have to do the nails. They used to step up. No longer will they after I left for a trip to visit him for 2 weeks. So my adult children care for them when they leave to visit their son who's in the military. Anyhow, tried placing a towel near their cage and moving closer and closer in hopes they wouldn't be afraid of the towel. And then they could use the towel, you know, to hold them while they trim the nails. That didn't work. How do I get these two to allow me to trim their nails or handle them? I can feed them both, but am not able to touch them. My son, they're rescue birds that their son rescued. Also would like them to come upstairs to the main part of the house to live in during the day, but don't know how to go about that, as they would not be able to have free range in the room like they do now during the day hours they have a basement room. So they feel bad that they're only in the basement room in the AM during school hours. So someone's caring for their son's sun conures. I mean, good for them, right? I mean, it's like very nice. So what can we do to help make the nail trims and also handling and towel and all that? What are your thoughts on all that?
I would first question the need for a nail trim. How do you know the bird needs a nail trim? A nail trimming seems to be this kind of cultural phenomenon, you know, that we have transferred to birds from dogs and cats. So we just assume, I guess, that birds need nail trims. Now, sometimes the nail trim is driven by the nails being too sharp. Obviously, that's not the case here because the birds aren't being handled. So it's not an issue of the sharpness causing discomfort. The way that you tell if a bird's nails are too long is to have them sit on a flat surface. And if the nail is too long, it's going to push the toe up off the surface or cause it to, you know, not be able to lie flat. In my experience, most birds don't need nail trims. I haven't trimmed my bird's nails in 20 years. So obviously you can't put these birds on a flat surface, but if they ever go down to the bottom of the cage, you can try and visualize it. One way you could visualize it is put papers over the grate. This is a wonderful husbandry tip. When I first heard it, I thought it was a horrible idea, but I tried it because it was recommended by someone I respected. It works brilliantly because the birds can go down and forage for food they've dropped. You don't have to scrub the grate. It's easier to change the papers at night. You can put down a week's worth of papers over the grate and then just pick up the top at the evening. But if they ever then went down, you could visualize that a little better. So I wouldn't worry about a nail trim unless the bird was having trouble getting around in its cage. And you can also put pedicure perches in the cages if you're able to do that. The pedicure perch that I recommend is the sand walk perch. And those do a fantastic job of trimming nails down. They're not sandpaper perches, so you don't need to worry about that. The name is Sand Walk, W-A-L-K. And they have a shape of a natural branch, so as the bird moves along it, they really do have their nails come in contact with it. So that would solve your solution. I really don't advocate the use of force with birds. If you really like toweling and restraining them for a nail trim, I'd recommend you don't do that. But another way that you can trim a bird's nails is to lure them up on the side of the cage. If they're on the inside, let's say you have a bird that likes millet. So the bird's on the inside of the cage, you're on the outside, you can look, millet, want some? Come over here. You lure them over to the side of their cage, and then you feed for position. You lure them up. And then while they're eating millet, you trim their nails on the outside. It's a much kinder, gentler way to do it. And if you can't lure a bird up the side of the cage, you can always create like a little box type thing with a wire on top, like 1/2-inch hardware wire, and then you just put your hand under. So that would be easy. You just lure the bird to walk onto this wire, and then your hand slips in underneath and clips the nails. So
Okay. Nancy has a question about male eclectus who keeps losing his toys and other things in his cage because he insists on masturbating on things. So he doesn't need to do this behavior at all. So the question is, so he doesn't need this behavior at all. So it's a male eclectus who keeps masturbating on his toys and other things in his cage.
well, I wouldn't. Male eclectus are one of the hardest. Well, eclectus, both genders, are some of the hardest birds to keep in captivity because of the way they live in the wild. They breed for 9 months out of the year, so they are especially sensitive to these triggers for hormone production. So I would encourage you again to examine those triggers I listed earlier and see what you can do to end those. If we have, oh, we're running out of time. Okay. And so I would just work very hard on reducing the triggers for hormone production, but I wouldn't remove everything from his cage, because if you do, then he has nothing else left to do but masturbate. So no, I think you need to train him and look at diet. Eclectus are very sensitive to the metabolizable energy in the diet. And there's all kinds of weird ideas out there about how you should feed eclectus. Eclectus parrots do really well on rowdy bush pellets. And they are 2,700 kilocalories per kilogram as far as we know. So they're the very lowest in terms of all the foods in metabolizable energy. So that might be just one positive thing you could do. If he's not eating a pellet, get him on a pellet. I should stop talking about eclectus and diet.
Okay, a longer conversation, it sounds like. Okay, so Jill has a question. Oh, sorry, she's the person that's in question number 1 with the rescued sun conure. Just they're still wondering what the fast wing fluttering could indicate, and is that something that is of concern? So it kind of
no, it doesn't mean anything. All birds do that. I'm so sorry I didn't make that clear. If he's bending down when he does it and fluttering his wings while he's screaming, it doesn't mean anything. Most people think it means the bird wants to go somewhere, but that is because they behave in such a way that it begins to mean that. But all birds do it. My birds who are fully flighted do it. So I think it just means a moment of indecision. But if you think it means that your bird wants to go somewhere and you go over and then take your bird somewhere, it will begin to mean that.
Okay.
But no, I wouldn't worry about that. I don't think no, just proceed to make this bird's life great.
Okay. Then we have a question from Ashwin. If you were to get in a situation with a bird only wanting to perch on you, would they reject you because they feel rejected when you move them off to a perch or stand? So the bird loves to perch on you, and are they going to feel rejected if you're moving them to a perch or a stand?
No, rejection is a human concept. Birds don't feel rejected. Birds are very practical. Remember, they're concerned with survival. We make up, a lot of emotional stories about parrots, but all parrots care about is what they can get. So as long as they're still getting what they want, they are perfectly fine with the situation. And there's another element to this that I think will surprise you. And that is that birds are biophilic. That means that they naturally, because they're not domesticated, they naturally gravitate to the sights and sounds and colors and textures of the outdoor world, as well as a state of being. And so when I help clients to get a bird off of their shoulder, I suggest doing it very gradually, because if the bird is used to perching on your shoulder for big chunks of time, they're not going to make that immediate switch to being off of you all the time. So what you do is to, first of all, fill up their gas tank of need. Let them start out on your shoulder, and then let's talk in 1 hour increments. If the bird is on your shoulder for an hour of time, then start with 45 minutes on the shoulder. And then after 45 minutes, put the bird on a perch and just stay right there, right in front of them, and just rapid fire feed them treats. That is the beginning of creating that positive association with the perch. And then if he wants to come right back on your shoulder, fine, do another 45 minutes, then work on stationing for 15 minutes. And then you gradually walk back the amount of time that the bird is on your shoulder. And before long, you have a bird who perches happily in your proximity. Now, here's the thing that is unexpected. Every single client that I have helped do this, and there have been hundreds, they have all told me that their bird is happier and they are happier too. And they are so surprised at this result because they just couldn't see in the beginning that either they or the bird would ever be happy again if we did this. Nobody hears this advice with much happiness themselves. So it comes to a very beneficial ending whenever you go through this process. And then the thing is, respect the bird's need for proximity. If you watch parrot flocks, birds don't hang out 15 feet from each other, not even 10 feet from each other. Every species seems to have a particular idea about how close flock members who are just friends should be. For most birds, it's going to be between, say, 2.5 feet and 8 feet. So you just get good perches, and you just reward the bird for sitting 2 feet away from you on the perch.
Okay, let's see if we have time for maybe one more. Okay. Let me see here if we yeah, it sounds, someone just commented we need a whole talk on the eclectus diet. Let's see. Well, I'm gonna announce today's winner. Let's see if we have let's see. Okay, so we are today. Oh, you know what? Can I circle back? I had a question just from the beginning of the webinar. You had answered a question about spaying. If you're petting your bird for like 30 minutes or more, that might give them the wrong hormonal signals. What about when, you preening their feathers? Because I know that's also like a bonding for other birds, right? Can you preen their little pin feathers with, your fingers? People ought to do that when they pet their birds. They preen their pin
Oh,
feathers.
sure. Yeah, I don't see any problem with that. You're just performing a service as a friend. So, in other words, we should behave with our parrots as if we are their friends, and we look to how they behave as friends in the wild for a rough template for that. Birds in the wild are never close together. They never spend a bunch of time in that intimate zone unless they are pair bonded and rearing young. So it's really not normal for them to be that close to us. That's why it causes so many problems. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was just because I sometimes, like when you're petting your bird and you find the pin feathers, and I was just clarification if that's like if you're spending a lot of time like kind of break, because when it's certain molting time of the year when you have a lot of pin feathers, if you're spending a lot of time like
I see you're talking about the length of the preening session, maybe.
Yeah.
So, oh, okay. Well, again, it should be perfunctory, right? So, you don't want to lean in and have your parrot lean on your chest and be talking with them very sweetly and, preening all their head feathers. Instead, you're standing separately from your bird and he asks for a head scratch or a preen. So you start doing that and you do it in a friendly way, not a lovey-dovey way, and you end it before a minute has gone by. And then if the birds generally don't want you to preen their heads for longer than that anyway, unless they're pair bonded.
Okay. And then you hit it wrong and they might give you a little
heads for longer than that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watch how birds interact. They don't spend a lot of time interacting. Their interactions with each other generally tend to be short and sweet.
Okay. We have, so final question, and then I'll announce today's winner of our giveaway. So how many hours of sleep do you recommend in general?
I don't recommend any number of hours of sleep. Parrots don't sleep the way that other animals do. Their brains are wired differently. The left hemisphere of the brain is wired to the right eye and vice versa. This is how birds can sleep while they're flying. Migrating birds, they don't stop every night and snuggle up so they can go to sleep. They fly while they're sleeping. And there are also many different species variations too. African greys have been observed in the wild flying after dark. Small cockatoos, they are often wakeful at night. So how do you judge a bird's bedtime? Listen to when your birds start grinding their beaks at night. And that's a good indicator that they want to go to roost, or they have gone to roost. So that's a good bedtime right then for them. So they can roost and then go to sleep. And then in the morning, get them up as early as absolutely possible, because they are up earlier than you. I can tell you that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I got distracted by the chat. Do I need to say anything else there?
Oh, I think someone just asked, like if there was like if you had to throw out like an hours, like would you say like, I'm guessing like do birds need like they always say like 8 hours for adults, humans, like what do we have any like?
Well, no one has determined that. How in the world would we determine that? If you take my advice and just do that, your birds will be fine. They will get plenty of sleep. They do nap during the day. You don't have to worry about your birds getting enough sleep. I promise you. Okay. It's not a concern. Everybody on social media thinks it's a concern. Never has been.
And are they going to be fine if you sleep in on the weekend? So do they adjust if you don't want to get up so early?
Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, birds are so flexible. When I worked as a vet tech, I got up at 5, got my birds up at 5, left at 6:30, got home at 6:30 at the earliest, and then let them all out. I still made sure, one of the reasons I got up at 5 was so they would have an hour out in the morning and 2 to 3 hours out in the evening, depending upon when I got home. That was the schedule 4 days a week. On the 3 days I had off, I got up at 7. So, you know, they do fine with schedule variation, but they're not going to do fine staying asleep till 9 or 10 in the morning. That's when a lot of feather damaging behavior occurs, because most birds get up even before dawn. They are, at least in the wild, they're awake before dawn. And in your homes, they're still awake. Even if you have blackout curtains, many of them are still awake. So, you know, they're spinning their wheels until we decide to start their day for them. No, I think if you live with birds, you should get yourself out of bed by 8. That's what I think.
There we go. I like to end on that. Well, you know, I think we need to do a part 2 of behavior science, because this is there's so much to explore. I'm hoping. Let's do this, because part 1 went great. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to announce our giveaway today. Winner is going to be we're going to give away Sunny Orchard Nutriberries, and that is going to go out to Antoinette McDaniel. Congratulations, you are today's giveaway winner. Hope that makes you and your birds' weekend, and also another Lafeber product of your bird's choosing. So congratulations, Antoinette. Yay! And thanks for everyone for joining us today. Again, I really think we should do a part 2 of behavior, because this is such a huge topic, right? It's like,
Okay.
It's just the even behavior basics to just all these complex behavior questions, and you kind of digest it down to us, or make it so we can easily digest behaviors better. So I appreciate that, Pamela.
Thank you. What I need to do right now, though, is sign off, because I have a client at 3 o'clock, and we're now
I'm sorry.
5 minutes after, so I gotta run. Okay.
All right, tell your client thank you for waiting for us, and we'll catch you next time.
To everybody who attended today. Thanks for all the great questions. I really hope that I have been helpful, and don't hesitate to schedule a consultation. We can have more fun.
There we go. Okay, on that note, everyone have a great weekend. All the best in your flock. Stay safe. Until next time. Bye.
Okay.